Pop quiz! Which federal party leader has entered into a voluntary compliance agreement with Elections Canada? In fact, Pierre Poilievre is a contracting party to a compliance agreement with Elections Canada, and that agreement is still in force today. Pierre Poilievre and the Commissioner of Canada Elections entered into their compliance agreement on July 4, 2017. But the agreement was prompted by actions that Poilievre committed during the 42nd federal election campaign. Yes, the one in which Justin Trudeau first became Prime Minister of Canada. The compliance agreement was precipitated by violations of the Canada Elections Act, specifically paragraphs 368 and 497, which make it an offence to knowingly circumvent the prohibition on contributions to a registered political party. Now, before we get into the compliance agreement, it's important that you understand that Pierre Poilievre was the Minister of Employment and Social Development Canada, often abbreviated as ESDC. Now, here are two key quotes from the compliance agreement that essentially describe what happened. On July 20th, 2015, the contracting party, that's Pierre Poilievre, formally announced on behalf of the Government of Canada the initiation of retroactive lump sum universal childcare benefit payments at funding announcements in Halifax and Truro, Nova Scotia. The UCCB benefits to be dispersed totaled approximately $3 billion and were directed to some 3.8 million families. In an accompanying news release, ESDC described these payments as, quote, the biggest single one-time payout in history. On Twitter and Facebook, the contracting party, Poilievre, described the payments as Christmas in July for Canadian parents. Here's the second paragraph from the compliance agreement that I want to highlight. As the Minister for ESDC and consequently the spokesperson for the UCCB program, the contracting party, Pierre Poilievre, converted two Government of Canada funding announcements into partisan events promoting the Conservative Party of Canada at no cost to the party. This caused the expenses related to the funding announcements to become a de facto non-monetary contribution to the Conservative Party of Canada. This had the effect of circumventing the rule in subsection 363 of the Act that only a Canadian citizen or a permanent resident of Canada may legally make a contribution to a federal political party. The Government of Canada is not eligible to make such a contribution to the party. Now, you might be wondering how Pierre Poilievre converted two Government of Canada funding announcements into partisan events promoting the Conservative Party of Canada. Well, here it is. You see, at these funding announcements, Pierre Poilievre wore a blue golf shirt bearing the Conservative Party of Canada logo. And he stated to the media that the UCCB payments were from our Conservative government, adding that, quote, if the Liberals and NDP were to take office, they would take the benefits away and raise taxes. As a result, Pierre Poilievre was forced to either enter into a compliance agreement with Elections Canada or take his chances with public prosecution. Poilievre made the smart choice, and he entered into the compliance agreement. The agreement has 8 main points, but 6 of them outlined one-time undertakings, such as the requirement that Poilievre put a link on his website for 30 days to a notice describing his infractions, and to share that same notice with the press. What remains in place today are the following 2 permanent provisions. First, an agreement from Pierre Poilievre to comply with the Elections Act in the future. And second, an agreement by Elections Canada to not refer these particular infractions for prosecution. This all amounts to an admission on the part of Pierre Poilievre that he was not compliant with the Canada Elections Act, but he did not have to concede guilt, given that a public prosecution for his violations under the Act never did take place. Now, in case you're wondering, what's the big deal? So he wore a blue golf shirt to an announcement. This fiasco is about a lot more than a blue golf shirt. Pierre Poilievre, as the Minister of Employment and Social Development Canada, leveraged approximately $3 billion of taxpayer money to essentially bribe 3.8 million families. And he was brazen enough to explicitly state that the UCCB payments were from, quote, our Conservative government, adding that if the Liberals and NDP were to take office, they would take the benefits away. It's precisely because of this highly egregious and sneaky tactic that Pierre Poilievre is still bound by his compliance agreement with Elections Canada today.